And hello and welcome to everyone. I know we've got folk dialing in from Brisbane to Port Elizabeth and many points in between and even either side. So hello and welcome. Today is our sixth, I think I count correctly, sixth webinar that we've been running in conjunction with the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime and Investment Affairs in Indonesia. And in several of the webinars we've held so far, we've highlighted, or others have highlighted, the important role that youth are playing in various aspects of the blue economy. So today we're going to hand it over to them. And because no matter how hard I try, I can't consider myself young anymore, I'm going to sit back and relax today. And so I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Milica, to run the show. Over to you, Milica.
Thank you, Matt. So good afternoon or good morning or evening, everyone, wherever you are. So welcome to the Indian Ocean Blue Economy webinar series. So today's webinar, the role of the youth in advancing the Indian Ocean blue economy, is run by early career scientists and professionals, including myself. So be gentle on us, please. Anyway, my name is Milica, and I will be your moderator for today. So today we have a pleasure of listening for excellent speakers across the Indian Ocean. They will introduce and share their most recent research on blue carbon in mangrove or seagrass ecosystems, climate change impacts on these ecosystems, as well coral reef restoration and rehabilitation, and the role of corporate in blue carbon initiatives. So each speaker will have about 12 to 15 minutes for their presentation. So in total, it will be about an hour of the talks. At the end, we will have about 20 to 30 minutes for answering all of your questions. So reminder for everyone that joined us in, you have a chat box available at the bottom of your screen. So please use it, introduce yourself, or exchange the notes about the talks or ideas. For the questions for our presenters today, use the Q&A tab, which is also at the bottom of the screen. And please note, when you type the questions, please note who would you like to answer your question. And so, as also mentioned, I would like to say, remind again that there will be a YouTube link available, so you can share or rewatch this talk again. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the four amazing professionals. So the first speaker today will be Jackie Raw from South Africa. She is a postdoc. She's a postdoc at Nelson Mandela University, working on climate change impacts on mangroves and salt marshes. For today's talk, she will discuss on measuring the responses of these ecosystems in South Africa and the potential of them as nature-based solution for climate change adaptation against sea level rise and storm surges. So Jackie, the floor, or should I say the screen and microphone, is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Share. Okay, so today I'm speaking about blue carbon ecosystem responses to sea level rise with focus on our research in South Africa. So briefly in this presentation, I'm going to discuss what is blue carbon, the vulnerability of blue carbon ecosystems, sea level rise, how do these ecosystems respond to sea level rise, how and why do we measure these responses, how can blue carbon ecosystems be included as a nature-based solution for coastal protection, and where we're measuring responses to sea level rise in South Africa. And I'll touch on my ongoing research as part of the IORA Blue Carbon Hub. So what is blue carbon? Blue carbon is the carbon that is stored in marine ecosystems, specifically in mangroves, tidal marshes, and seagrasses. Blue carbon ecosystems sequester and store large quantities of carbon dioxide, which they extract from the atmosphere and store as carbon in the plants and in the sediment. If left intact, this carbon can be locked up for centuries, and this allows these habitats to be used as climate change mitigation options. So where do the blue carbon ecosystems occur? They are globally distributed, with mangroves being restricted to occurring within tropical and subtropical regions. It's important to remember that 83% of the global carbon cycle is circulated through the ocean, and coastal habitats cover less than 2% of the total ocean area, but 50% of the total carbon that is sequestered by ocean sediments is captured in coastal habitats, which emphasizes the importance of these ecosystems. I'm going to briefly now touch on the distribution of blue carbon ecosystems in South Africa. The South African coastline is very high wave energy, and as a result, blue carbon ecosystems can only occur within sheltered estuarine areas and not on the open coast, as in many other places in the Indian Ocean region. Estuaries come in all shapes and sizes, and this influences which blue carbon ecosystems can occur and how they can occur within these estuaries. The South African coast is also structured into 3 biogeographic regions. There's a warm subtropical east coast, a warm temperate south coast, and a cool temperate west coast. And these biogeographic regions are formed by the 2 currents around the coast. We have the warm Agulhas current that flows down from Mozambique in the Indian Ocean, and we have the cool Benguela current that flows up from Antarctica on the Atlantic Ocean on the west coast. And these have an impact on the blue carbon ecosystems that occur around the coast. On the subtropical east coast, because it is warm, we have mangroves, and they can occur in estuaries that are permanently open to the Indian Ocean. In warm temperate coast, we have salt marshes in many of the estuaries, and the warm temperate coast is also the southern continental range limit for mangroves on the African continent. So in some estuaries, we have salt marsh and mangrove occurring together here at the range limit. On cool temperate coast, because the conditions are no longer suitable for mangroves, we only have salt marsh occurring in these estuaries. So why are blue carbon ecosystems vulnerable to sea level rise? This is because these habitats are structured by their position in the tidal frame, as different plant species can occur within different zones based on their physiological tolerance to being inundated and to salinity. So as sea level rises, these zones no longer become suitable for these plants, and they're expected to move up along the elevation profile to remain in a position that is suitable for them. However, if the waters continue to rise and the habitat cannot shift further up the slope, there can be conversion to open water or to mudflats. And if the habitat is completely lost, we say it has undergone coastal squeeze if there's no space for it to move into. So because mangroves and salt marshes occur within the tidal frame at the edge between the land and the sea, they are vulnerable to sea level rise, which is a significant threat to these ecosystems globally. Changes in inundation, duration, and frequency can lead to vegetation die-off, species shifts, and reduced productivity. Loss of vegetation can exacerbate this erosion, which amplifies the effect of rising sea levels. And if there's loss of vegetation and erosion of the banks, then we also have loss of the carbon that has been stored in these ecosystems. Sea level rise is, however, regionally variable, with many local scale factors that influence the vulnerability of these blue carbon ecosystems. So sea level rise is complicated, with the most recent report from the IPCC coming out last year in September. And this schematic diagram is extracted from this report, and it shows all of the processes that can influence global, regional, and relative sea level. We see that there are many interacting processes, and generally for coastal research, we're looking just at relative sea level change and not at all of these individual processes that are influencing it. So the IPCC projection now extends up to the year 2300, However, we consider most of our models up to the end of the century under the two IPCC scenarios, where RCP 2.6 is a low emission scenario and 8.5 is a high emission scenario. So the projection is up to 1 meter increase in global sea level by 2100. So how do blue carbon ecosystems fit in? Well, these ecosystems can respond to sea level rise. They are resilient and have persisted through previous global sea level fluctuations. There are two possible responses to sea level rise: surface elevation gain and landward migration. Response to sea level rise, however, depends on several factors that operate across different spatial extents and temporal periods. And because of this variability, sea level rise responses need to be assessed regionally and locally and not just at global scales. So in brief, to explain the two different responses, for surface elevation gain, the habitat keeps pace with rising sea level by accumulating sediments and organic matter in the way that they store carbon, and the elevation of the habitat rises at the same rate that sea level is rising, and so the habitat remains in a suitable position within the tidal frame. Alternatively, there is landward migration, whereas the habitats are forced to occur at higher relative elevation as sea level rises. This is only an option if there's available space for the habitat to migrate into. So how do we measure responses to sea level rise? I'm going to focus on measuring surface elevation, as this is what we have been doing as part of my research. So we're using the globally standard method called the rod surface elevation table, or RSET, coupled with a marker horizon. So in brief, how this works: the RSET is a benchmark constructed with stainless steel rods that are threaded together and driven to refusal, basically into the marsh or mangrove until it won't go no more, as far as it can go down. The RSET instrument is then transported to the field on each sampling occasion. The arm can be rotated into 8 positions, and measurements are taken from these 9 pins on the arm. Changes in the height of the pin over time are then used to reflect the vertical dynamics of the substrate in that area. I have a video here of taking these measurements in the field. Okay, so alongside is the marker horizon. This is an artificial soil layer made of clay or feldspar that is established at the surface, and it's used to measure surface accretion. So at one sampling period, we will lay down this a layer of white clay or feldspar on the surface of the marsh, and on the next sampling period, which could be 6 months to a year later, we take a core and measure the depth to this layer, which usually only a few centimeters or so, and this shows the accretion of soil above that point over that time period, and so it's complementary to the change that's being measured at the adjacent RSETs. So how can blue carbon ecosystems be a nature-based solution to sea level rise? Well, this is linked to their ability to gain surface elevation. Because blue carbon ecosystems can respond to sea level rise, they can keep pace if conditions are suitable. And this means that they can remain intact and protect areas behind them from sea level rise. But this depends on the local sediment, hydrology, and geomorphology. In South African estuaries, salt marshes serve as a buffer between properties and the estuary. In this way, they can protect these developed areas from storm surges and river floods, as the habitat acts as a buffer, and wave action in water is dissipated, and therefore the houses are protected. In our recent study, we examined whether these salt marshes would also serve as a protection against sea level rise. within the Nizhna estuary, we had 7 RSET benchmarks that had, and we looked at change over time in the surface elevation from 2009 to 2018. In order for the salt marsh to serve as protection against sea level rise, surface elevation gain must be greater than sea level rise. So local conditions are important, including the hydrodynamics and sediment availability. So what we found that the relative sea level for this site was approximately 2 millimeters per year. And what this meant was that there were only 2 sites where there was sufficient surface elevation gain over time at a rate that was equal to or more than the sea level rise rate. There was 1 site where there was hardly any change, 2 sites where there was surface elevation gain, but it was insufficient or not enough to keep pace with the sea level rise, and 2 sites where there had actually been elevation deficit or erosion. And so the drivers to this, like we said, are mainly linked to hydrodynamics and sediment availability being variable along the length of the estuary. So in order to look at more ways in which these blue carbon ecosystems can help with protecting from sea level rise, we need to keep measuring these responses. So currently within South Africa, we have a network of 5 estuaries where we are measuring these RSET benchmarks, and this is in collaboration with the South African Environmental Observation Network. So we are measuring in 3 salt marsh estuaries within the warm temperate area at the Knysna, Krom, and Swartkops estuaries, and we have 2 estuaries at the Nahoon and Ngango estuaries where there are mangrove and salt marsh. It's at the mangrove range limit. So that's currently what our network looks like. So now just briefly want to touch on the research that I've been doing as part of my postdoc, and also that has been done in collaboration with the Indian Ocean Blue Carbon Hub as part of the early career visiting program that I participated in earlier this year. So the current study is to apply the sea level affecting marshes model, and this is to look at the effect of future sea level rise on the Swartkops estuary in South Africa. Specifically, the questions we're looking at are: how will sea level rise impact salt marsh distribution in this estuary? What is the vulnerability of the developed areas to flooding from sea level rise? We're specifically looking at the 3 developed areas within the estuarine functional zone, so Red House, Amsterdam Hoek, and Swartkops Village. Where are the areas that salt marsh is expected to expand to with sea level rise? And can these areas be restored so that carbon storage can be enhanced? Specifically, we're looking at potential restoration of the areas highlighted in blue, which were previously being used by a commercial salt extraction works and have since been abandoned. And so these areas are now dry and desiccated, and we're looking at the potential to restore them to estuarine habitat. So some preliminary results. We found that by the year 2100, with 1 meter of sea level rise, there will be conversion of these abandoned salt extraction pans to marsh habitat. However, there's also a large increase in estuarine open water in the lower reaches and expected flooding of the developed areas. So to look at the effect of restoring the abandoned salt pans now and what that will have, we've considered conversion to estuarine habitat and how that will change carbon sequestration in the estuary over time. If they can be converted now into estuarine habitat, we will increase total carbon sequestration by 767 megagrams of carbon. However, this increase in carbon is multiplied by the year 2100, that if they could be converted now to estuarine habitat, there would be an additional gain of 54,614 megagrams of carbon. So this is still a work in progress, which I'm hoping to finish up soon. With the next question being, does restoration of these salt pans influence flooding of the developed land by 2100? So that's next on the agenda. So in conclusion, sea level rise is a global threat to coasts, which includes both ecosystems and people. blue carbon ecosystems can respond to sea level rise, and they can even provide coastal protection if conditions are favorable. In South Africa, we found that responses are variable, and we need more long-term data, as trends are only considered after more than 3 years on the RSET benchmark. This field of research is still emerging, but it's important, and it adds another dimension to estuary management in South Africa. So just want to thank the funding and collaborating organizations that have made this work possible, and also to all the individuals that have helped me both in and off the field with this research. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Jackie. That was a wonderful and interesting presentation. So if any of you have questions for Jackie, please type it in Q&A box, and then at the end of all the presentations, we will check your questions and answer them. So the next speaker is Astrid. She's currently a junior researcher in Marine Research Center under Ministry of Marine Affairs in Indonesia. She will present today her most recent work on blue carbon ecosystems, carbon stocks, as well as other ecosystem services in Indonesia. So Astrid, over to you.
Thank you, Milica. Wait a minute. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariska Astrid, and I'm a junior researcher in Marine Research Center under the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. And today, for my two-day presentation, I will share about the work that I've done, and I'm still doing it in blue carbon ecosystems. So, like I already introduced myself earlier, that I work in Marine Research Center under the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries. So these institutions studies everything related to marine science, such as marine biology, marine geology, oceanography, remote sensing, and so on. And the main responsibility is to provide recommendation and policy brief to the technical directorate. But for my research focus is on blue carbon ecosystems. And what is blue carbon? Blue carbon is a carbon captured by living organisms in coastal ocean ecosystems through the photosynthesis.
We've just lost you there, Astrid.
Okay. Astrid? Oh, you're back? Astrid? Oh, no, we lost her. Okay, it happens, especially when we are online.
It does. I'll see if I can connect with Astrid offline and see what we can do.
That's okay. I think we can go to the next one, and then she can join for the next after the third speaker. So Hana, do you want to continue? Do you want to present your work? Hana?
I can go ahead and start.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a second speaker instead of Astrid. We are going to have Hana. Oh, Astrid is back.
I'm so sorry for the interruption.
No, that's okay.
Can
It
I
happens.
continue?
Yes, of course, you can continue.
Okay. So, sorry for the interruption. Why blue carbon? One of the important function of blue carbon is a important natural carbon sink. As you see in the picture here, that they store high amount of organic carbon, especially in the sediment, greater carbon organic in the sediment compared to tropical forest, because the sediment is frequently inundated by water. So the sediment become anoxic and so the organic carbon is less oxidized. So the carbon will be stored for millennial time. So it can help reduce the greenhouse gases. Unfortunately, the area is gradually decreased, mainly due to land conversion, such as aquaculture, which potentially release the stored carbon to the atmosphere. Indonesia have one of the largest mangrove area in the world, up to 22% of global mangroves, and the area is extended up to 3.3 million hectares, and it occupied by up to 100 species. And in this picture, you can see the areas of mangrove in pink colors here. And this map was produced by several institutions. My institution is one of the collaborator, and with LIPI and CORMAP. Also, and seagrass, Indonesia also has one of the largest seagrass area in the world. It is estimated that the seagrass extent can be up to 2 million hectares, but up to 2018, the areas has been verified up to 290,000 hectares, which also occupied by lots of species, 15 species. And this map was also produced by the collaboration of 3 institutions. So what are we doing so far? Since 2011, we did carbon stock inventory in mangroves and seagrasses. We measured the organic carbon stock, the above ground biomass, the below ground biomass, and also in the sediment, both in mangroves and seagrasses. But we also try to understand the carbon dynamic. So we not only measure the stock, but we also measure other aspects such as productivity, carbon accumulation rate by measuring litter falls, growth rates like the stem increment and leaf increment. And also we put a sediment trap to measure the sediment accumulation rate in seagrass. And we also measure carbon sources like the origin of carbon, whether the carbon in the sediment is originated from the outside system or allochthonous, or it's produced in situ or autochthonous using the stable isotope approach. And like Frank, like Jackie, we also measure the sediment accretion rates using the RSET to see the response to sea level rise. It is important to generate robust data related to carbon dynamic on mangroves and seagrass ecosystems to improve the decision on the protection of this ecosystem as an effort for climate change mitigations. As you can see, that as you know, that the magnitude of carbon varies geographically, and Indonesia has a very big area of mangroves and seagrass, and we have diverse type of environmental settings and various local conditions that will affect the carbon dynamic, carbon stocks, sources, and accumulation rates. So from our last paper, we did measure the organic carbon sources and accumulation rate in different areas with different environmental settings and different local conditions, which are in estuarine mangroves, carbonate or marine mangroves, and in area where the mangroves is degraded and undegraded. So it is from our result, we found that the estuarine mangroves could store larger carbon stock compared to the carbonate mangroves, but that's not always the case. In some areas, marine mangroves could store larger carbon stock compared to estuarine mangroves. And we found some interesting result that in one area here, there are two areas with the area that one is the undegraded here and one is degraded because this area received large amount of river input from the hinterland. So this area undergoes a high sedimentation, and in the area where receives large input of hinterland, carbon stock is lower compared to the undegraded, where the area receives less river input. But surprisingly, that the carbon accumulation rates is higher. Organic carbon accumulation rates is higher in the degraded areas where the area receives large amount of input from the hinterland, and it highlight that we cannot only count organic carbon stock, but we also need to measure other aspects like accumulation rates to determine the potency of carbon storage. And for the sources, we also found that the area that received large input from the hinterland, the organic carbon receives the organic carbon that accumulated sediment derives from the hinterland, of course. It's different from the other areas that the sources of carbon mostly mangrove originated. So we put this data on global scale, and we found that the carbon stock and accumulation rates in Indonesian mangrove ecosystem are among the highest, and this could be a good news and potential for climate change mitigation strategy. And not only in mangroves, we also do research on seagrass ecosystem. This is also our recent paper about carbon stock and sources in Indonesia in one area in Shamodi, where we measure on different zonations. One in the close to the land and further to the land, and we found that the carbon stocks vary by area, of course, and the area that is close to the land that receives large impact from human activities has the organic carbons that accumulate sediment receives most dominantly from particulate organic matter, where the other areas, the organic carbon sources are mostly from leaves, seagrass leaves. So this could give some idea that the organic carbon stock or storage, we can predict what is the sources, like the organic matter that is accumulated in the sediment by using this technique. So yeah, my part of research is only a small part of the integrated study from our group to evaluate ecosystem services. So I am in a ecology group, but other group doing geometric and mapping, and also they are doing water quality and also social economy. So we gathered all the data, all information to get a better policy for the technical directorate to be implemented for people. So I think that's my presentations. Thank you, Milica.
Thank you, Astrid. It's always nice to see that some countries are doing blue carbon on a national scale. We're also trying to do that in Thailand. So it's very refreshing to see that you also did it in Indonesia.
Thank you.
So please, if you have any questions for Astrid as well as for Jackie, you can type them in Q&A box and just note, is it for Astrid or Jackie? And then at the end of all the talks, we will address your questions. So the next speaker, so we go from mangroves and seagrasses to corals. So the next speaker is Hana. So Hana is currently working at the Maldives Marine Research Institute on the National Coral Reef Restoration Program. Today, she will share with us about her work on coral reef, their restoration and rehabilitation. So Hana.
Thank you so much. I just quickly I'm just having a bit of a difficulty here. Share the right thing here.
Yeah, it should be that one. But we see 2 slides now.
Oh, shoot.
It should be full screen.
I think I know what's happening. Is that right?
Yes, yes, perfect. Okay.
Sorry about the technical difficulties there. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Hana Amir, as I said, from the Maldives Marine Research Institute, and I'd like to talk to you a bit about coral reef restoration and rehabilitation and what it means for the Maldives. I'll talk a bit more about what coral reef restoration and rehabilitation is, and then go a bit about what it means for us in the Maldives and what we are doing as part of this activity here. So to start off, what is coral reef restoration and rehabilitation? A textbook definition of sorts is that it's the return of an ecosystem, or at least a close approximation of its condition prior to disturbance. So it's trying to restore the structure and function of coral reef ecosystems. This is quite relevant now, as you guys know, or may or may not know, coral reef ecosystems are one of the systems that's most endangered by climate change and all of its impacts, and we are expected to lose quite a bit of it as the years roll on by, especially if we maintain the trajectory we are on. In terms of coral reef restoration and rehabilitation, though, there's 2 main types of it. So there's something called passive restoration, which is rather traditional in a sense. This involves things like management activities that create NPAs, usage guidelines, so on and so forth about specific areas. And the idea here is that if we protect an area properly, they'll be able to restore themselves to the pre-disturbance condition on its own time, essentially a restoration by natural means. The second type of restoration that's gaining a lot of traction is called active restoration. And this has everything to do with ways we can essentially interfere with the natural process to help it along so that the recovery process is faster. I think people are quite familiar with things like, at least these days, are quite familiar with things like coral nurseries, where they hang fragments of corals from various frames so that they grow to a particular size and then it's transplanted onto a reef. So that's the type of active restoration that's quite common. Restoration and rehabilitation, though it's a bit of a buzzword right now on a global and as well as on a local scale, it's been going on for quite a bit of while. So despite its longevity, it's a rather new field of research, and it's very much in its infancy because we've not been able to really demonstrate properly that we are able to really restore the function or the structure of a coral reef to what it was pre a disturbance, and that's one of the main challenges in this research field. So how does this relate to the Maldives? The Maldives is an island nation. We have about 1,192 islands with about 26 natural atolls, and that amounts to about 4,500 square kilometers of coral reef, which then translates into the 7th largest coral reef ecosystem in the world. So anything that happens to the coral reef affects us quite hugely because that's essentially the entirety of our nation. In terms of blue economy, which would come as no surprise to anyone, we are very dependent on these coral reefs. Tourism, I'm sure you've all heard of what a beautiful place Maldives is, and it's on the ads everywhere. And that's the main source of income into our nation. It's entirely almost built upon tourism now. And the tourism itself is built upon our coral reefs and their survival. This also affects fisheries. Fisheries is the second biggest blue economy industry in the nation. And the fisheries, whether it be reef fisheries or pelagic fisheries, they're all connected into these reef systems. They form the nurseries, and they form the livelihood of a lot of people. So again, coral reef and their survival tying into the blue economy. Apart from these two large industries, the general livelihoods of people depend on the survival of coral reefs. Apart from some amounts of subsistence fisheries, our homes, our schools, everything is built upon these coral reefs. So in terms of research towards restoration and rehabilitation, it falls onto the Maldives Marine Research Institute. So I'd like to speak a little bit about what the Maldives Marine Research Institute, where I work at, is. So we were established in 1984, and we are essentially the marine research arm for the Ministry of Fisheries, Marine Resources, and Agriculture. And our purpose is to give scientific advice and scientific basis for policies, management, regulations, guidelines, all sorts of things related to the marine environment. And we do this through research we carry out ourselves, through collaboration and engagement with the public, local NGOs, other government bodies, international partners, and so on and so forth. And we have quite a broad range of types of research, which includes fisheries research, fisheries research goes into pelagic fisheries research, fisheries, grouper fisheries, so on and so forth. Ecosystems research, which looks at coral reefs, it looks at endangered and certain species, and it looks at cetaceans and stuff like this. And then we have mariculture development, which develops the mariculture sector within the country. So going into a bit about the coral reef research we do. It's part of the marine ecosystems research, as I've mentioned, and it's one of the oldest research programs in the country. We started doing things like coral mining research, its impacts, hot surveys, reef surveys, and it also led to the development of the National Coral Reef Monitoring Program directly in response to the 1998 bleaching event. And we've been monitoring the health and status of the Maldives reef through this program. And it's also led to the development of the National Coral Reef Monitoring Framework. A more recent program, which is the program that I lead currently at the Institute, is the National Coral Reef Restoration and Rehabilitation Program. This program was established in 2009, so it's a really, really young research program, and it was developed directly in response to climate and anthropogenic impacts that we've noticed around the country. It became a priority for our government to ensure that research is being carried out to make sure that there are means for us to restore and rehabilitate our reefs, as well as increase the resilience and resistance to these changes, so to secure our future in a way. And this is a nationwide program. It's not focused on one specific at all. So in terms of restoration and rehabilitation, one of the things we had to come up with is a strategy. How do we as a national program approach restoration and rehabilitation of a nation that's entirely made out of coral reefs? So to start with, and what we are making the base of this program is assessment of coral reefs, which is inclusive of, but does not limit itself to looking at the environment, the water quality measures, currents, oceanography, what the weather patterns are like, what kind of stresses there are in this particular reef, be it from humans, be it from nature, what kind of stresses they're facing, what type of usage there is. So in the Maldives, we classify a lot of reefs into 3 types. Is it a resort reef? Is it a community reef? Is it an uninhabited reef? So what kind of usage is it facing? What type of management does it have? Is it a protected reef? Has it been declared protected and doesn't have a management plan? Or is it a freestanding reef with no management? What's the benthic of these coral reefs like? What's the flora and fauna like? What's the recruitment and settlement of these coral reefs like? How susceptible is it to stresses, to impacts? And what is its resilience and resistivity? And how connected are these individual reefs to each other when we form this atoll formation? Based on these assessments, we decide what type of intervention we'll be choosing. So is it a passive restoration? Do we enact management plan? Is it an active restoration? Do we directly interfere with the reefs and try and rehabilitate it? Or do we do a combination of both, where we are actively trying to restore the reefs, but we are also managing the system, removing the stresses, so on and so forth. But regardless of what type of intervention type that would be applied to a specific reef, we would be monitoring and evaluating the intervention type and what it's doing to the reef. And we'll be taking into account how is the ecological function of the reef at current, before and post whatever activity we do. How sustainable is our intervention type? Does it keep costing us money, time, effort, people power to keep doing it to maintain the ecological function of these coral reefs? And what are the long-term consequences of these reefs? Are we inevitably making these reefs weaker, or are we making them stronger, so on and so forth? So what does this mean for us? So it means that we have to do a lot of research to really understand the reef system and the types of methods that are being carried out to restore and rehabilitate the reef. So one of our focuses is to test common methodologies that are being used currently in restoration rehabilitation activities to see what the efficiency of those activities are and what the effectiveness is. We also do settlement and recruitment studies to see how sustainable an activity might be and what are the chances of a reef recovering of its own. We're also looking at spawning durations and timings of those. We're also taking into account the assessments done by the National Coral Reef Monitoring Program, as well as looking at human activities like what's already been done to restore the reef and what the impacts are. So an example of this is the resort industry, where quite a lot of pseudo restoration and rehabilitation activities are congregated into, so to speak. So as you can see from this map, a lot of these sedentary coral frame type restoration rehabilitation activities are very much, it's very dense in the central region of the Maldives, and this relates to where the resort numbers are the highest in the Maldives. So
Hana, sorry to interrupt you. You have a few more minutes left. I'm not sure how close to the end you are. Sorry.
Yeah, I just got one more slide, and I'll be done. So this is where these activities are most densely populated, and it's populated within these resort type of places. So what are the challenges? So we're a spatially spread nation with the differences in types of usage of the coral reefs in terms of management, as well as the coral reef system. There's differences in communities and attitudes, and which results in differences in how the community will engage in national programs, which is why we try to collaborate with international partners like CSIRO to test out novel techniques that collect spawn slick to restore reefs, and to see if activities like that will be applicable to the Maldives, as well as collaborating with local partners like resorts who are already doing these kinds of things to elevate whatever they're doing to an activity that actually restores reefs instead of focusing on a particular patch. So that's some of the challenges in a very, very nutshell way of this type of program that I'm leading right now. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much for letting me present on this.
Thank you, Hana. So we should hurry up a bit. So if we want to keep track of time. So our last speaker for today is Shamodi. She is from Sri Lanka, where she works as a manager, corporate sustainability and conservation for Dilmah, Ceylon Tea. In her presentation, she will talk about important roles of the corporate in bridging all involved parties in the blue carbon initiatives and her experience in working together with the local communities around blue carbon resources of Sri Lanka. Just to mention, I'm sorry, if your Q&A box is not working, you can type all of your questions in the chat and then we'll keep track of it. So sorry, Shamodi, you can start.
Yeah. Let me share my presentation. So hi all. I hope my audio and everything is working. So yeah, I would like to congratulate on all the previous speakers for the extensive research, filling the gaps of information, and trying to find the climate risk in blue carbon ecosystems. That's so amazing. What I'm going to talk about a different end of the coin. So it's that the role of young conservation agents in corporate platform, taking Dilmah Ceylon Tea's blue carbon conservation initiatives as a case study. And so yeah, you must be wondering what a tea company is doing, a person from tea company, why is she talking about blue carbon initiatives? So actually incorporates the environmental responsibility can be varied. So in Dilmah, we are based on taste, goodness, and purpose. Those are the three pillars that holding up the company and the business strategy in a nutshell. So taste, goodness is everything to do about tea, the quality, the properties, and everything. Purpose defines our liability that we have towards the environmental and social, making it a better place, making the planet a better place. So I represent Dilmah Conservation, the dedicated environmental conservation arm of Dilmah Tea. So in Dilmah Conservation, our conservation initiatives varies from terrestrial biodiversity to climate adaptation, conservation education, to publications, and to blue carbon. This is the team. I'm the team lead of this amazing team. So all of these mid-career professionals has a part to play in the some work extensively on conservation education and some on operational operations of conservation, some on conceptualizing the conservation initiatives and liaising with the other governmental authorities and technical parties. And some are working on conservation financing. So all these people get together, making our blue carbon conservation initiatives a success. So when I talk about blue carbon, our team got into something to do with marine conservation in 2012, kicking off it with a dugong conservation program with Jeff and Department of Wildlife, and it escalated to reef protection by protecting Kayankani Reef and conducting the baseline on behalf of the Department of Wildlife. And then in 2019, it was converted, this Kayankani Marine Reef was gazetted as a sanctuary and recognized under Department of Wildlife. So that was a milestone that we always very humbly celebrate. And then in 2019, we started empowering the coastal communities to take ownership of their own beaches to keeping it clean. So we're doing that in collaboration with the Marine Environmental Protection Authority of Sri Lanka. And now we are coming down to blue carbon. Blue carbon is fairly new initiative for blue carbon restoration is fairly new initiative for Dilmah. But why we are getting into it? Simply because for a business, for a conservation, for them to invest in a conservation initiative, always need to have corporate aligned objective, which is a must if you're looking for a sustainable conservation project. So Dilmah has a requirement of becoming a carbon negative entity by 2030. So that's why the conservation team thought, so if us to support that objective, what is better than blue carbon, investing in blue carbon. So we identified the requirement and the importance of important role of blue carbon ecosystem plays in carbon sequestration. Obviously, all of y'all know it's 3 or 4 times higher than the terrestrial ecosystems. Plus, it's a conscious conservation decision because at the moment, I think the restoration, the attention of need to pay to blue carbon ecosystems are pretty much high in Sri Lanka, and I think in other part of the countries as well. It's a underexplored avenue of conservation. That's why we are getting into this picture. And then, as in any other conservation initiatives conducted by Dilmah Conservation Team, the elements that we're trying to touch base through this is pretty much simple. The immense ecosystem services provided by blue carbon ecosystems, and that it has the potential to generate sustainable livelihood opportunities, because we always believe in participatory conservation impacts for sustainability. And when the community comes to the picture, you have to make sure that you deliver continuous, accurate, yet simple conservation education. And then our aim is to create replicable models of blue carbon conservation, the stories, success stories that are attractive to other corporates, then to make, to get them also involved in this restoration work. The other thing is that lies between the community, impact of community and the corporates is the research tourism part. We are trying to build a low impact tourism concept that is strictly for the research oriented tourists, so that the benefit, the economic benefit can be gone to the community. The research that they are bringing in, the knowledge, like the previous three speakers, the knowledge, the information they are bringing in will be supporting the ecosystem restoration, blue carbon ecosystem restoration work of Sri Lanka. And last but not least, the climate, supporting of the climate adaptation that is provided by these initiatives. So as I speak to you about public education of these initiatives, our team is very concerned about keeping it simple. So we have baptized our mangrove. We are working on mangroves, and we are working also on seaweed and seagrass. So our mangrove is called Defending Mangrove Project. And the other one, the seaweed and seagrass, is a forest underwater. Because these projects ticking off the community benefit, regulatory, stakeholder collaboration, and scientific research, all these entities, these projects are coming under Green Recovery Initiative. So Green Recovery is the advanced version of nature-based solutions, if I must tell y'all, because it ticks off so many angles within a conservation project. Quickly to walk you all through of our mangrove restoration model. So as I told you, we are looking at creating a successful model, a success story that can be discussed among public platforms, and also to use it as a story for corporates, so that they can also come in as financing sources to this ecosystem. We have started it small in a pilot scale in 30-acre plot, which is owned by our business, the land. It's located in Kalpitiya, which is towards the northwestern province of Sri Lanka. First, what we did was where we have identified the baseline of the species that are existing in that locality with the technical support of Marine Environmental Protection Authority of Sri Lanka. We figured the species diversity is very low at the existing plot. It's degraded, so we only have one Avicennia, one Luminicera, and 2 species from Rhizophora. And so here you can see in the bottom left is the existing, the adjacent plot to the land that we own. So that is owned by the government. It's a protected area. And the middle right is the pathway to the land that we are trying to restore. You can see we need to work on the hydrology and everything. So it's a project that we need to start from scratch, but we are really interested in taking this forward. The corner right shows you all the ladies from Marine Environmental Protection Authority conducting the baseline survey. So because I talked about this conservation, the communication, from the day one, we make sure that we educate people in a very simple manner on these attempts. So I'll play what we showed the community on the environmental
Conserving blue carbon ecosystems like seagrass, mangroves, and marshlands is important because they store 3 times more carbon than forest and land ecosystems. They also provide jobs and income to local economies, improve water quality, support healthy fisheries, and provide coastal protection. However, it is estimated that half of the global mangrove cover has disappeared in the last 40 years. Did you know Sri Lanka was designated as the global mangrove champion under the Commonwealth Blue Charter? Over the next decade, Dilmah Conservation will commit to restore and conserve over 24 acres of degraded mangrove forest in Sri Lanka.
Oops, sorry.
Coastal protection. Did you know Sri Lanka mangrove champion under the Commonwealth Blue Charter. Decade, Dilmah Conservation will commit to restore and conserve over 24 acres of degraded mangrove forest in Sri Lanka. We are collaborating with governmental organizations, local communities, educational institutes, and other corporates. We aim to create a replicable model which will restore mangrove and shallow marine ecosystems with socio-economic development by the year 2030. Mangroves are a unique ecosystem, a special ecosystem, and a vulnerable ecosystem. But we can protect the mangroves together.
It's a small attempt, but the story can, the impact could be higher in many stratas of stakeholders. So coming back to the seaweed restoration project, pretty much similar model that we are establishing. This is happening in the northern province of Sri Lanka. This, the technical entity that we are collaborating in this one is the National Aquaculture Development Authority. Why I'm highlighting these entities is that for a corporate, it is a must to have a successful conservation project. It is a must to collaborate with the relevant technical and governmental authority. So here, the problem the farmers, local farmers, they face is they really want to invest in sea cucumber farming because it's lucrative, even though it has nothing to do with blue carbon. But the major threat they face is the poaching. So that's why we are coming in. We are investing and supporting them to invest in a buffer zone of seagrass or seaweed so that they can protect their sea cucumber, and we can invest in restoring the blue carbon ecosystems. And through that, we support Dilmah to achieve the carbon negative Dilmah 2030 goal. Along with this, our philanthropic arm will be working with these communities to elevate their livelihood status, their living status, the education level of the kids. And so it's a package. So these are some of the field surveys and the identified locations, some of the Euchemia species that we are thinking escalating of planting. These are the trial monorails of seaweed that has planted. So as the last slide, I would like to add that why our futuristic perspective is to bridge all the entities. Being in the corporate, our best strength is to bridge the gaps, aid, assist, keep one going, provide advocacy for other corporates. So that's what we are aiming at. I will finish off with talking about the challenges we faced. The calculation of carbon sequestration was a challenge. So when we really went out there and started speaking about it with our challenge, there's another corporate who came in our aid, and we are working together in technical consultation with partnership with CCC in determining the carbon sequestration amount of these lands. And what we lack is the technical fluency. So that's why I'm so grateful to CISRO and IRA for taking us also into your program. And so from previous, as I told you all, previous presentation, it helped me a lot to understand more in depth about these ecosystems. So technical know-how, so this partnership provide us this technical know-how support as well. So thank you so much all for this opportunity, and have a good day.
Thank you, Shamodi. It was very interesting to see the other side. As a scientist, we don't see the other side. We don't understand what's going on. So it was very informative for me, especially to know what happens on the other side. So we have few questions that came through. If you still have questions for any of the speaker, you can use Q&A box, or if it's not working, you can use a chat box. So the first question was for Jackie from Susanta, and he asked, so his first question was, have you considered AR4 vulnerability concept in your study, and how?
We have not considered that. We haven't really been looking at assessing vulnerability in that way, because we've only really been measuring just what responses are, but it is definitely something that we could look into. Yeah.
Okay. And then between you and Astrid, you both measured. You both used RSET. So Matt asked, how RSET give your useful information, and can you comment on the cost and effort involved in using these for those who might want to use them?
Okay, I'll go first. The RSET does give very useful information. In terms of cost, initially it is a big cost to put the benchmarks in. For us, it was to get everything manufactured to the standard. But once they are installed, then the cost is minimal to return to take the measurements. Yeah. The other place where a big cost comes in is if you want to have each benchmark, if you want to know what is the precise level of that benchmark relative to mean sea level, because then you need it to be surveyed by a land surveyor, and that, at least in South Africa, is quite a big cost. So we're looking to do like one of our estuaries, which was where we had nine benchmarks, and the costs we're getting are between 20 to 30,000 rand for an estuary, which we're currently, I think, still around 10 rand to 1 Australian dollar. Yeah. So I don't know if Astrid wants to add anything there.
Yeah, I know. To install the RSET is quite costly, but in our case, we borrowed the equipment, some of the equipment, so I cannot tell how the exact cost. But once installed, like Jackie said, once installed, the frequent monitoring will be not so hard, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why for us that work is in collaboration with our SAON, which is the Long-Term Monitoring Association for Environmental Data. So the cost was covered by them and not by like our research team. But yeah, it can be costly.
Right. Okay. Good to know. We were also thinking here in Thailand, so it's good to spread the word. So next question is for Hana. There are many types of artificial reefs made for rehabilitating coral reefs. Which one that you think is the most working type of artificial reef for this rehabilitation of coral reefs by looking at all the benefits?
That's a really difficult question for me to answer, because the thing about restoration rehabilitation is the effectiveness of any method you employ isn't the same in any two reefs. So what would be the best method in one specific reef? It would not be the best method and show the same results or have the same advantages or negative impacts or so on and so forth in another reef. And that's one of the challenges we've been having here, because because we're so spatially spread out, the two same methods don't really have the same results. So it's a bit difficult to say this one thing is the best method when it's so situationally specific.
Okay. So the next question, I think Hana, and you can help Astrid a bit. So the question was designed for Astrid, but Hana, you can help out a bit as well. So the question was blue carbon in the coral reef. What its measurement in coral reef ecosystem and method to use it? So either Astrid or Hana can answer that.
Okay, maybe I can answer this. I'm about to write it to Hendra. Yeah, so far it's still debated whether coral reef is a carbon sink or carbon source. So blue carbon is it refers to the organic carbon that is captured by the vegetated coastal ecosystems, and so far it's not coral reef is not included. So I don't know how to measure blue carbon in coral reefs. Maybe.
No, yeah, I agree. I think still there's quite a lot of debate, as Astrid saying, about whether it's source or sink. It fits into the chain somewhere, but so measuring it is still up in there.
Right. Okay. Question for Shamodi. What aspect is the most interesting for a company or corporate sector to put investment in blue carbon project as their CSR program?
So that's an interesting question, actually. I would say, representing the corporate sector, the trick is in there's no CSR anymore. When I use the technical term like that, it has become to a point that it's a business priority, especially people like us who are in agriculture sector. So tea, even though tea is in highland and it grows in terrestrial lands, blue carbon that has the building the climate resilience, that has the potential of building climate resilience, eventually support to keep the business ongoing. So it's actually sustainability and corporate social responsibility has come to a point that it has to be integrated as a part of the business. So I think that is the most interesting point the businesses consider. What has the potential in bringing long-term sustainability, whether it's economic or environmental or social. So in this case, because blue carbon has the potential to bring long-term ecosystem and environmental sustainability to the business and larger to the planet, as we all have to sustain. So that was the reason, I think.
Okay. We have another question for you. It is interesting to know, Shamodi, you are involving with Kayan Kenny. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly.
Yeah.
Marine protected area research, but the problem is still stakeholders of the coral reef still do not know that this area is MPA. As well, still no legal action or management practices taking place on this area. The person who is asking question and my institute, NARA, have tried to start a dialogue between stakeholders of coral reef and the government officials to help develop conservation management plan. So the question, I'm not exactly sure what was the question.
I think it's just he's sharing good
sharing information. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's good that we are really happy to help too, because we've been, since the baseline study was going on in 2012, then in 2019 the gazetting of the Kayan Reef. So in future, the monitoring work or educating the stakeholders of it, if there's any way that Dilmah can be a part of it and can be useful to any of the technical entities, we're happy to do that.
Okay, good to know. Next question is for Astrid. Can you just explain a bit more about the potential carbon content in degraded and undegraded mangrove sites?
I'm not sure the question, but I will try to answer. So in undegraded mangroves, carbon content is higher compared to the undegraded mangroves. The carbon content is higher compared to degraded mangroves because the carbon content in degraded is diluted by river input. So the potential, maybe we should protect all and preserve mangroves. So to to get a higher carbon stock, maybe. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I know that in seagrasses, usually like for my study, undegraded seagrasses had more carbon stock than degraded. But I'm not sure about mangroves. I don't work with mangroves. Maybe Jackie can help.
Yeah. In my study, in the degraded mangroves, carbon stocks is lower compared to the undegraded mangroves, because carbon content, the content is diluted by river inputs, so
Right.
the content is lower. I just don't get the potential of carbon content here, but I think it is important to protect carbon, so to get yeah.
Yeah, okay. And we have time for, I think, 1 or 2 more questions. So for Jackie, have you done any downscaling techniques when you used RCP's 4.5 and 8.5 model? And have you validated the model results?
So we haven't been, it's been quite a tricky thing to decide what to use there. So we've gone with the 1 meter sea level rise, but what you can do within the modeling, which is what we've done within the SLAM model, is to use the data from your nearest tide gauge to actually calculate what is the relative sea level rise being experienced by that site and project that to 2100. So instead of using an arbitrary number of 1 meter where you may not get 1 meter at your site, that's the approach we've been taking. So for this site, with using the what's been measured at the tide gauge, we're actually only projecting to, it works out to around between 0.6 and 0.7 meters by 2100. So yeah, you do have that option that you don't have to just choose 1 meter by 2100. So the study question, the way we set it up, is we haven't been looking at different scenarios. That hasn't been like our approach. We're more just trying to see what is like within the most likely range for this site, what could happen. Yeah. In terms of checking and validation, that the way to do that is to backtrack the model. So if you had to have an older vegetation map and then run it until like the present state to see if it does that correctly, but I haven't been able to do that, mainly because we have old maps of our area, but we don't have an old elevation survey, which is also a requirement for the model. So you need to have the distribution of the vegetation and the elevation of the site, and mostly we don't have an old elevation map to properly do that. So we haven't done a full scale like model validation using that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we also have the same problem, but so far that I know, you split the data into training and testing. I mean, that's how I do it. And then you use the training data to train your model, and then testing, which is like 30-20% of the data to evaluate your model. And the last question for Shamodi, how do you educate the people of Sri Lanka to conserve the blue carbon ecosystem in your country?
Well, actually, I wouldn't use the term Sri Lanka. The video I previously showed you all is also a mode of education. That is, we use all our social media platforms, including our main corporate channels as well, which we have we represent over 100 countries. So that is one avenue of the social media. We use it correct. It's a vast array of good education. The other thing is we do workshops from, we have a series of workshops called Youth in Responsible Conservation, which not only talks about blue carbon, but a lot of other conservation arenas as well. that is for the youth to make them responsible conservationists. Other thing is sometimes you might never know, cartoon as a mode of good education has worked out really well for us for the past 2-3 years. We use cartoons and other modes of arts and crafts as a mode of education. So those are the things: workshops, arts, and social media.
Okay, that's very good actually. So I'm sorry we don't have any more time for questions, but there are a few more in Q&A box. So, and they stated who are they for, so any of the panelists can type their answer. So in a closing, I would like to thank Matt from CSIRO and IORA Blue Carbon Hub for having us here and having organized this wonderful webinar. I would also like to thank Indonesian government for co-hosting and organizing this. So I think Andreas wants to give the last greetings to everyone. So over to you.
Okay, maybe we should give applause to all speakers and also to Milica for chairing this informative discussion among youth. I think most of you are not youth anymore, but anyway, you are still millennial anyway, compared to us. Yeah, there are several points that I would like to comment. First, about the way how you to give the information was very, very nice. I mean, in top of the scientific things, I mean, the way of to communicate, maybe we can compare between young people and then older, like myself or Matt, something like that. It's different, more attractive. Also, it's more attractive. I saw some of you are giving a short movie, which is very informative, I think. And because not many people can hear, I mean, understand by what we are spelling, but sometimes the pictures, the attractive videos could give us some information regarding what is going on our surrounding environment. And another things, when we are talking about the ocean blue economy, anyway, it's not only about the natural resources, but also about the human capital. So both are making our sustainability happening. So in many regions, maybe we understood that our environment now is degraded in every places in the world. But we are thinking that we need to solve the environment and as well as how to provide some solution to local community so that they could be becoming the champion of our environment, and at the same time they can survive in their surrounding environment in a sustainable way. I think these are something that I have learned from you, the speaker, the Fatimat and Jacqueline, Astrid, and Shamodi. You are giving us a very good overview, not only about the, I was thinking most of you will talk about the blue carbon, but it's not. Some are giving about the coral reef, which is very interesting. Also some information about the seaweed or seagrass, and as well the mangrove, of course. Mangrove sometimes is offer confidence, something like that, when we're talking about the blue economy, something like that. But actually, coastal ecosystem, they are connected each other. We cannot separate them one with others, something like that. No, it's not possible. And also it's not useless, something like that. I think congratulations to all speakers, and thank you for the Milica for giving or chairing this youth session for the IORA countries, and hoping to see you guys not offline, but not online, but also offline in one place in the future. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Milica.
And thank you, everybody. And thanks to all speakers. That was really great. And bye.